The silence in the glittering, chandelier-lit restaurant was louder than the scream that was caught in Celine's throat. One moment she was the beautiful pregnant wife of tech billionaire Lucan Blackwood, the envy of every woman in the room. The next she was a public spectacle, dripping in bittersweet chocolate ganache and humiliation. The gasps of the city's elite were a symphony of her disgrace. Lucan's face a mask of cold fury over a declined credit card was the last thing she saw clearly before her world shattered. But what he and everyone else mistook for weakness was the awakening of a storm. They thought they were watching a victim crumble. They had no idea they were witnessing the birth of a queen. The evening had begun as it always did as a performance. Celine Blackwood, née Varel, understood her role perfectly. She was to be serene, beautiful, and effortlessly elegant, a living, breathing testament to her husband's impeccable taste and success. At 7 months pregnant, the role was becoming more physically demanding, but she played it with the quiet grace that had first captivated Lucan. Tonight's stage was Aria, a restaurant so exclusive it didn't have a sign, only a discreetly monogrammed oak door that opened into a world of hushed tones, crystal and velvet. The air smelled of money truffles and expensive perfume. Lucan was closing a major deal, a merger with a German tech conglomerate that would elevate him from a mere millionaire to a titan of industry. Herr Wagner and his wife, a stern-looking couple with eyes that appraised more than they admired, were their dinner guests. "Selina, darling." "You're glowing," Lucan had said, as he'd adjusted the diamond necklace against her skin before they left their sterile, white-on-white penthouse. It wasn't a compliment. It was an instruction. Glow. Perform. Be the asset I require. The dinner was a masterclass in tension. Lucan was charming a predator, cloaked in a Tom Ford suit. His laughter a little too loud, his grip on Celine's thigh under the table a little too tight. He regaled the Wagners with tales of his meteoric rise, conveniently omitting the ruthless tactics and broken partnerships that paved his way. Celine smiled, sipped her water, and offered polite, intelligent contributions, when spoken to, drawing on her past life as an art curator, to discuss the German expressionist piece hanging near their table. "Your wife is not just beautiful, she is cultured." Frau Wagner noted a hint of surprise in her voice. The total package, Lucan agreed, patting Selina's hand as if she were a prize-winning show dog. She knows her place. The barb, subtle and meant only for her, slid under her skin. She knew her place, the place he had created for her. When they met, she had been a vibrant, independent woman with a passion for art and a small but fulfilling life. He had swept in like a hurricane, showering her with a world she'd only read about. He was intoxicating, brilliant, and persuasive. He had painted a future so beautiful that she had willingly handed him the brush, not realizing he would paint her into a corner of the canvas, decorative and silent. The deal was unofficially sealed over dessert. Handshakes were exchanged. Promises of synergistic futures were made. Lucan was incandescent with triumph. The waiter, a young man with nervous eyes, placed the leather bill folder discreetly on the table. This was another part of the performance. Lucan would always make a show of letting her handle the trivialities. "Darling, would you take care of that?" he said, waving a dismissive hand. He slid his wallet across the table. It was not his usual one. It was a slim crocodile leather card holder she didn't recognize. Use the Centurion. The black card. The ultimate symbol of his status. It was all part of the theater for the Wagners. Selene opened the holder. There was only one card inside, She took it, her fingers tracing the heavy anodized metal. She handed it to the waiter, who scurried away. They made small talk for a few minutes. Herr Wagner was discussing a summer trip to Monaco. Lucan was recommending a yacht charter company he had invested in. The performance was in its final triumphant act. Then the waiter returned. He approached the table with the shuffling, apologetic gait of someone about to deliver terrible news. He leaned down and whispered something to Lucan, his face pale. Celine couldn't hear the words, but she saw the shift in Lucan's posture. His back stiffened. The charming smile vanished, replaced by a tight, dangerous line. "What did you say?" Lucan's voice was low, but it cut through the restaurant's gentle hum. "I'm very sorry, sir," the waiter stammered, now audible to the whole table. "The card, it was declined." Silence. It was a stark, deafening silence that sucked all the air from the room. Herr and Frau Wagner froze their coffee cups, halfway to their lips. Celine's heart hammered against her ribs. Declined Lucan's black card. It was impossible. It was a bottomless well of credit, a testament to his financial omnipotence. Lucan slowly turned his head to look at Celine. His eyes, usually a warm hazel, were now chips of cold, hard stone. "What did you do?" he hissed. "What, nothing?" She whispered, her blood turning to ice. "I just gave him the card you gave me." "Don't lie to me, Celine." He seethed, his voice a venomous whisper. "Did you go on another one of your ridiculous shopping sprees? Did you buy another one of those hideous sculptures?" He was deliberately humiliating her, creating a narrative for their audience. The spendthrift wife, the irresponsible airhead. It was a fiction, and he knew it. He managed their finances with an iron fist. She was given an allowance, a generous one, but every penny was tracked. The card he had given her was not his primary one. It was a secondary card one he must have known had a limit. A limit she had apparently unknowingly reached. This was a setup, a test of loyalty and obedience that he had designed for her to fail. "Lucan, please," she begged softly, her eyes pleading. The Wagners were now staring at their plates with intense focus, wishing the floor would swallow them whole. "You've embarrassed me," he snarled, the facade of the charming billionaire crumbling to reveal the cruel, insecure man beneath. "You've made me look like a fool in front of my new partners." The waiter, desperate to defuse the situation, arrived with the dessert trolley. "Perhaps some cake, sir?" On the house. A celebratory slice of our Valrhona chocolate decadence. It was a beautiful cake, a glistening, multi-layered tower of dark chocolate mousse and ganache. A peace offering. Lucan looked at the cake. Then he looked at Celine. Her pale, horrified face, the swell of their child beneath her dress. A strange, terrifying smile twisted his lips. A celebratory slice, he said, his voice dangerously soft. "Yes, I think we should celebrate." And with a movement that was both shockingly fast and yet seemed to happen in slow motion, he picked up the largest slice of cake with his bare hand. The rich, dark frosting oozed between his fingers. "Here, darling," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "Have some cake, since it's all you're good for." He lunged across the table and shoved the cake into her face. It wasn't a playful smear. It was an act of violent degradation. The force of it snapped her head back. The cold, sticky mass exploded against her cheek, her hair, her eyes. Globs of chocolate and cream slid down the front of her pristine white Chanel dress, a grotesque mockery of a corsage. For a moment, there was no sound, but her own ragged, choked breath. The world was a blur of chocolate and tears. Then the gasps, a collective horrified intake of breath from every corner of the restaurant. Frau Wagner let out a small, strangled cry. Celine sat there frozen, the sweet, cloying smell of chocolate filling her senses, the sticky mess hardening on her skin. She could feel dozens of eyes on her, a mixture of pity-disgust and morbid curiosity. Through the smear of frosting, she saw Lucan. He was standing breathing heavily, his hand still covered in cake. He wasn't looking at her with remorse. He was looking at her with pure, unadulterated contempt. He had done this to reassert his power, to punish her for a crime he had engineered, to remind her that he could and would destroy her at a whim. Something inside Celine, something that had been dormant for years, snapped. It was the part of her that had once been the independent curator, the woman who commanded respect, the woman who would never, ever allow herself to be treated this way. It was the fierce, primal instinct of a mother protecting her child from the poison of its own father. Slowly, deliberately, she reached for her water glass. Her movements were calm and measured. She dipped her linen napkin into the water and began to wipe the chocolate from her face, her eyes never leaving Lucan's. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Her silence was more damning than any tirade. She wiped her cheek clean, then her forehead. With each methodical swipe, she was wiping away the last 3 years of her life. She was wiping away the illusion of love, the gilded cage the woman she had pretended to be. When her face was relatively clean, she placed the soiled napkin neatly on the table. She looked at Lucan, at the stunned Wagners, at the gawking patrons. Then she rose to her feet, her posture as regal as a queen's. The chocolate-stained dress, a symbol of her humiliation, now looked like battle armor. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. She held Lucan's gaze for one long, final moment. In her eyes, he didn't see fear or shame. He saw a promise of a reckoning. Then she turned and walked away. Not with the hurried steps of a woman fleeing her shame, but with the steady, resolute stride of a woman walking toward a war. The silent restaurant parted for her like the Red Sea. The only sound was the soft click of her heels on the polished marble floor as she walked out of the restaurant, out of her marriage, and into a future she would carve out for herself. The great Lucan Blackwood was left standing in the ruins of his perfect evening, a smear of chocolate on his hand, and a look of dawning horror on his face, as he realized he hadn't just thrown a piece of cake. He had unleashed a fury he could never have imagined. The cold night air hit Celine like a physical blow, snapping her out of the surreal haze of the restaurant. Rain had begun to fall, a fine, misting drizzle that clung to her hair and mingled with the sticky residue of chocolate on her skin. The city lights of New York blurred into abstract streaks of neon and gold. For a few moments, she just stood on the pavement, the sounds of traffic, a dull roar in her ears, her hand resting protectively on the curve of her stomach. The doorman, a kind-faced man named Michael, who had always treated her with gentle deference, rushed forward with an oversized umbrella. "Mrs. Blackwood, are you all right? Your car is—" "Don't call the car," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. The name Mrs. Blackwood felt foreign, a costume she had just shed. "Just hail me a taxi, please, Michael." He saw the state of her dress, the look in her eyes, and wisely asked no more questions. A yellow cab pulled up, and she climbed inside the worn leather seat, a stark contrast to the plush interiors she was used to. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. Where to? She couldn't go back to the penthouse. The thought of its cold, silent spaces, filled with objects Lucan had bought, but she had never loved, made her feel suffocated. It wasn't a home. It was a showroom. She had no family in the city. Her parents retired, and living a quiet life in Vermont would only panic. She scrolled through her phone, her fingers trembling slightly. There were dozens of names, wives of Lucan's associates, society acquaintances. Not friends. Not a single person she could show up to in the middle of the night covered in cake and metaphorical ruin. Except one. The Greenwich Hotel. She said the name coming to her in a flash. She paid for the cab in cash, a crumpled $100 bill she kept in a small pocket of her purse for emergencies. This, she thought with a grim sense of irony, certainly qualified. In the lobby, she ignored the concierge's discreetly raised eyebrow at her soiled dress and asked for the penthouse suite, paying with her personal credit card, the one linked to a trust her grandmother had left her, the one Lucan didn't know the full extent of. It was her only remaining link to her old life, a financial tether to Celine Varel. Once inside the sprawling, beautifully appointed suite, the dam broke. She slid down the door, her Chanel dress pooling around her, and finally let out the scream that had been trapped in her chest. It wasn't a scream of fear, but of rage. A primal, gut-wrenching roar of fury at her own blindness, at Lucan's cruelty, at the years she had wasted placating his fragile ego. She stayed on the floor for a long time, her hands wrapped around her belly, whispering to her unborn child. "I'm so sorry," she wept. "I am so sorry. I promise you this will never happen again. I will build you a world where you are safe, where you are loved, and where no one will ever treat you or your mother like that again." The tears were a baptism washing away the last vestiges of the naive woman who had fallen for a billionaire's charm. As the sun began to cast a grey dawn over the city, a new Celine emerged. Her eyes were puffy. Her designer dress was ruined, but her spine was forged in steel. Her phone began to buzz incessantly. It was Lucan. First a string of texts. "Where the hell are you? You made a complete fool of me. The Wagners are spooked. Get back to the apartment. Now!" Celine. "I swear to God, if you don't answer me." Then the calls started, one after another. She let it ring, watching the screen light up with the name Lucan. Each unanswered call felt like a small victory, a reclaiming of her own peace. An hour later, the tone of the texts shifted. "Darling, I'm sorry. I was under a lot of pressure. The deal, it made me crazy. Come home. We can talk about this. I love you. Don't throw this all away over a stupid misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. The word was so laughably inadequate it was insulting. He didn't see the problem. The problem wasn't the public humiliation, the assault with a piece of cake. The problem in his eyes was her reaction to it. Her defiance. She blocked his number. Then a new message popped up from a number she didn't recognize. "Celine, this is Eleanor Blackwood. Lucan is worried sick. Whatever spat you've had, you are being childish. A pregnant woman should not be running around the city alone at night. You have a duty to your husband and your child. Come home at once." Eleanor. Lucan's formidable mother, a woman carved from ice, whose approval Celine had pathetically sought for 3 years and never received. Eleanor had clawed her way out of poverty alongside her husband, and she guarded their family's status with the ferocity of a dragon. To Eleanor, Celine was an outsider, a pretty but ultimately unsuitable addition, lacking the requisite ruthlessness. Eleanor's text solidified Celine's resolve. This wasn't just a fight against Lucan. It was a fight against the entire Blackwood dynasty and the toxic values they embodied. She showered, scrubbing the last of the chocolate and the humiliation from her skin. She ordered room service, a feast of pancakes, fruit, and coffee, and ate with a hunger she hadn't felt in years. She was eating for two now in more ways than one. She was fueling herself for the fight of her life. She knew she couldn't do this alone. Lucan was a powerful man. He would use his wealth and influence to crush her, to paint her as an unstable gold digger, to fight for sole custody of their child out of pure spite. She needed a weapon, someone just as ruthless, just as brilliant, and just as unshakable as he was. Her mind went back to a charity gala a year ago. She had been seated next to a woman who had captivated her. While other women spoke of shopping and vacations, this woman spoke of hostile takeovers and Supreme Court precedents. She was sharp, incisive, and wore an air of authority that even Lucan had seemed to respect. Her name was Genevieve Dubois, one of the most feared divorce and corporate litigators in the country. They had exchanged pleasantries, and Genevieve had given her a card. "For you or for a friend?" she'd said with a knowing look in her eye, a look that suggested she had seen 100 women like Celine, trapped in gilded cages. Selina had kept the card tucked away in her wallet, a talisman she never thought she'd need. She found the card. The elegant embossed lettering spelled out, "Dubois and Associates. We don't fight battles. We win wars." Her hand was steady as she dialed the number. "Genevieve Dubois's office? My name is Celine Blackwood," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I need to speak with Miss Dubois. It's a matter of extreme urgency." An hour later, a black town car picked her up from the hotel. She had used the hotel's concierge service to purchase a simple but elegant navy blue dress, a pair of low heels and a coat. Dressed in her new anonymous armor, she walked out of the Greenwich, leaving the ruined Chanel dress and the identity of Celine Blackwood in a heap on the floor. The offices of Dubois and Associates were on the 50th floor of a skyscraper overlooking Central Park. The decor was minimalist and powerful dark wood steel and glass. No soft edges. Genevieve Dubois was standing by the window when Celine was shown in. She was a tall, imposing woman in her late 40s with sharp, intelligent eyes and hair pulled back in a severe chignon. She was wearing a tailored suit that probably cost more than Celine's new dress. "Mrs. Blackwood," Genevieve said, her voice smooth as silk. She gestured to a leather chair. "Please sit. I must admit your call intrigued me." Celine sat. She didn't cry or recount the story with histrionics. In a calm, factual tone, she described the dinner. She described the cake. She described the years of subtle control, the emotional manipulation, the isolation. She spoke of her pregnancy and her fear for her child's future in such a toxic environment. Genevieve listened without interruption. Her fingers steepled her eyes, never leaving Celine's face. When Celine was finished, there was a long silence. "He didn't just throw cake at you, Mrs. Blackwood," Genevieve said, finally, her voice low and intense. "He announced to the world, and more importantly to you, that you are his property, an object he can deface at will. The public nature of the assault was deliberate. It was designed to shatter your self-worth and ensure you felt too ashamed to fight back." "He underestimated me," Celine said, her voice hard. A slow smile spread across Genevieve's face. "Good. That's his first mistake. It won't be his last." She stood up and walked over to a large whiteboard, picking up a black marker. Your husband is worth, by public estimates, approximately $900 million, soon to be over $1 billion with the Wagner merger. He has a team of lawyers who are, for lack of a better word, sharks. They will try to paint you as mentally unstable, citing postpartum hormonal changes. They will claim you are an unfit mother. They will offer you a settlement that seems huge to a normal person, but is pocket change to him. And they will bury it under an ironclad NDA that will silence you forever. She turned to face Celine. You can take that deal. You can walk away with, say, $20 million and a gag order. You can live a very comfortable life in obscurity. Or, she paused, her eyes gleaming, we can do something else. We don't just ask for a divorce. We don't just fight for custody. We go to war. We take the foundation of his power, his company, and we crack it. Celine stared at her. How is that even possible? Lucan Blackwood is new money, Genevieve stated, as if reciting a case file. Men like that, men who rise that fast, always cut corners. They leave footprints. Shady investors fudged numbers, conveniently lost documents. You, Celine, have been living inside his fortress for 3 years. You've listened to his late-night calls. You've seen the names on his private calendar. You've been the perfect decorative wife, which means he got careless. He spoke freely around you, believing you were either not listening or not intelligent enough to understand. Am I wrong? Celine's mind began to race. The hushed, angry phone calls Lucan would take in his study. The trips to the Cayman Islands, he claimed, were for banking diversification. The odd visitor who came to the penthouse late at night, a man named Silas Thorne, who looked more like a thug than a businessman. The way Lucan had boasted about outsmarting the SEC on an early venture. At the time, it was just noise, the background music of her life with him. Now, it was ammunition. No, Celine said, a new, dangerous excitement building inside her. You're not wrong. This is what we do, Genevieve said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. We don't start by filing for divorce. That puts him on the defensive. We start by gathering our arsenal silently. You will become my primary intelligence asset. You will tell me everything you can remember. Every name, every date, every offhand comment. We will hire the best forensic accountants and private investigators in the world. While he is busy trying to bully you back home, we will be building a case so damning that when we finally make our move, he won't have a choice. A choice for what? Celine asked. Not for half, Celine. Genevieve said, her eyes burning with intensity. That's what his ex-wife would ask for. You are going to be so much more than that. We are going to position you to take a controlling interest in the one thing he truly loves, Blackwood Industries. We will prove that his initial seed funding was fraudulent, and that you, through your support and the use of your own premarital assets, which he leveraged without your knowledge, have a foundational claim to the entire enterprise. It was an audacious, breathtakingly bold strategy. It was terrifying, and it was the most empowering thing Selina had ever heard. It wasn't about money or revenge. It was about justice. It was about taking the power he had abused and wielding it to build a better, safer future for her child. He will try to destroy me, Celine whispered. Let him try, Genevieve replied with a shark's smile. He's bringing a cake to a gunfight. Now tell me everything you know about a man named Silas Thorne. Celine took a deep breath. The war had begun. The next 2 months were a masterclass in clandestine warfare. Celine, under Genevieve's meticulous guidance, became a spy in her own past life. She checked into a long-stay residence at the Mandarin Oriental under the name Selene Varel, a symbolic reclaiming of her identity. The suite became their war room, its pristine walls soon covered in whiteboards, filled with names, dates, and intricate webs connecting shell corporations and offshore accounts. Her first task was a deep dive into her own memory. Genevieve brought in a specialist, a former intelligence analyst named David Chen, who was an expert in memory retrieval. For days, David guided her through her years with Lucan, not with hypnosis, but with structured cognitive interviewing techniques. Think about his study, Selene. David would say, his voice calm and even. Don't think about the arguments. Think about the objects. What was on his desk? What did the papers look like? What did you smell? Slowly fragmented details sharpened into focus. The scent of Lucan's specific cologne mixed with the old paper smell of a particular leather-bound ledger he kept in a locked desk drawer. The name on the ledger was Project Nightingale. He'd once drunkenly referred to it as the nest egg no one can touch. She recalled the key was not on his main keyring, but on the back of a small, ugly painting of a ship that hung in their dressing room. A gift from his mother he dared not remove. Silas Thorne, she remembered. He visited maybe 5 or 6 times, always late. Lucan would take him into the study, and they would talk for hours. Once I brought them drinks and I heard Silas say, "The assets are clean. They've passed through 3 territories. The original source is untraceable." Every morsel was a victory. Genevieve's team of forensic accountants, a formidable group known as the Vultures, took the information and vanished into the labyrinth of global finance. Meanwhile, the Blackwood machine churned into motion, just as Genevieve had predicted. Lucan, realizing Selena was not coming back, unleashed his lawyers. The first shot was a formal letter delivered by a courier. It was an offer, a one-time payment of $25 million in exchange for a swift, quiet divorce, and her signature on an NDA so restrictive she wouldn't be able to write a memoir about her life as a hamster, let alone her marriage. The letter also included a veiled threat about her emotional state and Lucan's deep concern for the well-being of his unborn child in her sole care. "Standard move," Genevieve scoffed, tossing the letter onto a table. "He thinks he's dealing with a scorned wife. He has no idea he's negotiating with a future corporate raider. We ignore it." Next came the family. Eleanor Blackwood managed to get Celine's new unlisted number and called. Her voice was like splinters of ice. "Celine, I don't know what kind of pathetic game you're playing, but it ends now." Eleanor began dispensing with any pretense of warmth. "You are carrying a Blackwood heir. That child will not be born into scandal. You will accept Lucan's generous offer and disappear gracefully, or I will personally spend every last dollar of my fortune to prove to a court that you are an unstable, unfit, gold-digging whore. Do you understand me?" The old Celine would have crumbled. The new Celine felt a cold calm settle over her. "Eleanor," she replied, her voice even, "I suggest you retain your own legal counsel. You might need it. And if you ever speak to me in that tone again, I will add slander to the growing list of charges. Goodbye." She hung up, her heart pounding, but her spirit soaring. The most painful move came from Lucan's brother Marcus. Marcus had always been the good Blackwood, gentle and artistic, often caught in his older brother's domineering shadow. He'd always been kind to Celine, treating her like a sister. He called her, his voice full of concern. "I'm so sorry," he said, sounding genuinely distraught. "Lucan is out of his mind. What he did is unforgivable. But please don't let this get ugly. Think of the baby. Maybe you and I can talk, mediate. I can talk some sense into him. I'm on your side in this." Against her better judgment, Celine felt a flicker of hope. She agreed to meet him for coffee in a neutral public place. She chose a bustling cafe in the West Village. Marcus was waiting, looking anxious. He held her hands, his eyes full of sympathy. "He's a monster when he feels threatened," Marcus said. "But he's my brother. I can't just abandon him. Tell me what you want, what's your plan? How can I help?" She wanted to trust him. She desperately wanted an ally within the family, but Genevieve's voice echoed in her head. "Everyone is a combatant until proven otherwise. A Blackwood's first loyalty is always to the family name and the money that protects it." So she played her part. She acted distraught and confused. "I don't know what to do, Marcus," she said, letting a tear slip down her cheek. "My lawyer, she's so aggressive. She's talking about trying to ruin Lucan to go after the company. I don't want that. I just want to be safe to have enough to raise my child quietly." She then fed him a piece of calculated misinformation. She thinks there's a weakness in the initial public offering of his first company, InnovateX. She's focusing all her investigators on that. Marcus's eyes widened for a fraction of a second, a flicker of something she couldn't quite read, before he masked it with sympathy. "That's crazy," he said, shaking his head. "There's nothing there. I'll tell Lucan to have his lawyers get ahead of it. Don't worry, I'll protect you." When she reported the conversation to Genevieve, the lawyer's smile was predatory. "And the trap is set," she said. "He'll run right to Lucan and tell him to fortify his defenses around InnovateX, which is exactly what we want, because the real rot isn't in InnovateX, it's in Project Nightingale. While they're busy guarding the front door, we'll be breaking in through the basement." As Lucan's legal team focused on a wild goose chase, Genevieve's investigators hit pay dirt. The key Celine remembered hidden behind the ugly ship painting was their first major breakthrough. A discreet operative, a former MI6 agent who specialized in asset retrieval, was hired. Posing as an art appraiser sent by Eleanor to update their insurance policies, a ruse Eleanor unwittingly confirmed when the appraiser called her office, he gained access to the penthouse. 20 minutes later, he walked out with high-resolution photographs of every page in the Project Nightingale ledger. The ledger was the smoking gun. It detailed the initial multi-million-dollar seed money for what would become Blackwood Industries. The funds weren't from venture capitalists, as Lucan had always claimed. They were from Silas Thorne. And further digging by the vultures revealed that Silas Thorne was a professional money launderer, a ghost in the system, who cleaned cash for arms dealers and drug cartels. Lucan Blackwood hadn't built his empire on a brilliant idea. He'd built it on dirty money. But there was another more personal bombshell hidden in the records. Just before their marriage, Lucan had convinced Celine to invest a significant portion of her grandmother's trust into what he called a private equity fund managed by a friend. He had promised her it would triple in value, providing a nest egg for their future. The ledger revealed the truth. The fund was a shell company that funneled her clean, legitimate money directly into the same account as Silas Thorne's dirty cash. Her money had been used as a clean layer in the laundering scheme, giving it a veneer of legitimacy that helped it pass bank scrutiny. He hadn't just married her. He had used her. He had made her an unwitting accomplice in a criminal enterprise. Celine felt sick. The betrayal was so profound, so calculated it stole her breath. This went beyond infidelity or cruelty. This was a violation of the deepest trust. "This changes everything," Genevieve said, her voice grim, as they stared at the flowcharts connecting Celine's trust to Thorne's illicit network. This is no longer a divorce. It's a reclamation. Under established legal precedent, specifically the unclean hands doctrine, a case can be made that the entire foundation of Blackwood Industries is fraudulent. And your investment, your clean money that he criminally co-opted, gives you a legitimate foundational claim. You weren't just an investor. You were the legitimate seed that allowed his poisoned tree to grow. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place with a phone call from one of Genevieve's investigators in the Cayman Islands. He had managed to track down a disgruntled former employee of the bank Lucan used. For the right price, the banker was willing to talk. He confirmed that Lucan Blackwood and Silas Thorne were co-signatories on the original Nightingale account, and that he had been paid handsomely to look the other way when large, untraceable wire transfers arrived. They had him. They had the ledger, the banking trail, and a human witness. While this was happening, Lucan, feeling increasingly cornered, escalated his public campaign against her. Tabloid articles began appearing quoting anonymous sources close to the family, who painted Celine as a mentally unstable, greedy woman whose erratic behavior had forced a heartbroken Lucan to take action. They even twisted the cake incident, claiming she had become hysterical over a declined card, and had thrown the cake at him, and that in the ensuing chaos she had stumbled and gotten it on herself. It was a lie so audacious it was almost brilliant. But Celine, armed with the truth of Project Nightingale, felt nothing. The lies were the desperate flailings of a drowning man. "It's time," Genevieve announced one evening, closing a thick binder filled with evidence. "He thinks he's winning the public relations war. He has no idea he's about to be checkmated. We're not going to his lawyers. We're not going to the press. You are going to go directly to him." "What?" Celine was stunned. "You are going to request a meeting. Just the two of you. Not in an office. In the penthouse. Your home," Genevieve instructed. "He will be arrogant. He will think you are there to surrender. And that is when you will show him the board. Not to threaten him, but to give him his one and only choice. He can either face federal prison for money laundering and fraud, or he can agree to our terms. And our terms are not half of his fortune." Genevieve slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It wasn't a divorce settlement. It was a stock transfer agreement. "Our terms," she said with a chilling smile, "are control." The request for a meeting was sent via a simple direct email from Celine to Lucan, bypassing their lawyers. "Lucan, I think it's time we spoke face to face. Alone. At the penthouse. Tomorrow evening at 7. His reply was almost instantaneous. "I'll be there." Celine could feel his smugness through the screen. He would assume her resources were drained, her spirit broken by his media campaign. He would see her request to meet on his home turf as an act of surrender. He was walking into his own throne room, expecting to receive a plea for mercy, utterly oblivious to the fact that he was walking into an execution. The next evening, Celine arrived at the penthouse 10 minutes early. She had chosen her armor with care, a simple, impeccably tailored black dress that spoke of quiet power, not flamboyant wealth. Her hair was pulled back, her makeup minimal. She looked, she thought, like a woman who meant business. Her baby bump was more prominent now, a constant physical reminder of what and who she was fighting for. She walked through the vast, silent rooms. The cold, white marble, the minimalist furniture, the museum-quality art he had purchased as investments. It all felt alien. It had never been a home. It was a monument to his ego. She stopped in front of the ugly painting of the ship in the dressing room, the one that had hidden the key to his downfall. With a small, grim smile, she took it off the wall and leaned it against the fireplace, a silent trophy for her eyes only. The doorbell chimed at precisely Asundrum p.m. She opened it herself. Lucan stood there, a vision of arrogant success. He was perfectly dressed, his expression a carefully calibrated mix of condescension and feigned concern. "Celine," he said, his voice smooth. "I'm glad you came to your senses." He strode past her into the living room, pouring himself a whiskey from the crystal decanter on the bar. "Look, I'm prepared to be generous. My original offer still stands. 25 million. It's more than enough for you and the baby to live comfortably. Just sign the papers and we can both move on." Celine didn't say a word. She walked over to the large marble coffee table and placed a thin leather-bound folder on its surface. "What's that?" he asked, taking a sip of his drink. "A counter-offer from that shark you hired. Don't bother. My lawyers will tear it to shreds. This isn't from my lawyer." "Lucan," she said, her voice calm and level, devoid of the emotion he expected. "This is from me." He watched a flicker of annoyance in his eyes as she opened the folder. Inside were not legal documents, but a series of high-gloss photographs. She laid them out on the table, one by one. The first was a crystal-clear image of the Project Nightingale ledger, open to a page showing Silas Thorne's name next to a wire transfer for $10 million. Lucan froze. The whiskey glass paused halfway to his lips. The color drained from his face. The second photograph was a flow chart meticulously drawn, showing the path of money from Thorne's known shell corporations directly into the seed fund for Blackwood Industries. The third photograph was another flow chart. This one showed the direct transfer of funds from Celine's own trust account into the very same fund. Her clean money mingling with the dirty. "Where did you get these?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. "You taught me to appreciate art, Lucan," she said coolly. "So I hired an appraiser to look at our collection. He was particularly interested in a certain painting of a ship." His eyes darted towards the fireplace, where the painting leaned. The look on his face was a mixture of disbelief and pure, unadulterated panic. He finally understood. This wasn't a negotiation. It was an ambush. The Cayman National Bank was also very helpful. Celine continued, her voice relentless. "It seems a certain junior vice president was feeling underpaid and overstressed. He kept impeccable private records, and he's prepared to testify." She let the silence hang in the air, heavy and suffocating. She watched the billionaire titan of industry, the man who had humiliated her in front of the world, visibly crumble. His arrogance evaporated, replaced by the raw, primal fear of a trapped animal. He was no longer seeing his scorned wife. He was seeing the architect of his ruin. "What do you want?" he finally managed to say. His voice barely a rasp. "Money. You want half, fine, take it. Take half the company. Just destroy those." Celine gave a small, humorless laugh. "Half. Oh, Lucan, you still don't get it, do you? This isn't about money. It's about consequences. It's about building a future for my child, a future that isn't founded on criminality and deceit. I don't want to be your silent, wealthy ex-wife. I want to erase the poison you started this company with." She slid a final document out of the folder. It was not a photograph. It was a legally binding contract, drafted by Genevieve Dubois and a team of the most brilliant corporate lawyers in the country. "You have two choices," she said, her voice like ice. "Choice A. I walk out of this building, and this folder gets delivered to the U.S. Attorney's Office and the SEC. You'll be arrested by morning. You'll spend years in court and you will likely end up in federal prison. Silas Thorne's other associates probably won't be happy about the attention. The name Blackwood will be synonymous with fraud. Your company will collapse, your family will be disgraced, and your child will visit you in a prison jumpsuit." She paused, letting the horror of the image sink in. Or she said, pushing the contract across the table towards him, "Choice B." He stared at the document as if it were a venomous snake. "What is it?" "It's a stock transfer and restructuring agreement," she explained. "You will voluntarily cede a 51% controlling interest of Blackwood Industries to a new holding company, a holding company of which I am the sole director." He stared at her dumbfounded. You want to run the company?" The idea was so alien to his perception of her that he could barely process it. "I don't want to run it day to day. I'll install a new ethical CEO, a board of directors that isn't composed of your sycophants, but I will have control. Final say. You will retain a 49% stake, making you incredibly wealthy on paper. You will be given the title of Founder and Chief Product Advisor, but you will have no executive power. You will step down as CEO, citing a desire to focus on new innovations and your growing family. We will present a united, amicable front to the world. You will be free. The company will be saved. But it will be mine. Its future will be clean. That is my price." It was a checkmate, so absolute, so devastating that he couldn't speak. She wasn't just taking his money. She was taking his power, his identity, his legacy. She was leaving him a figurehead, a ghost in his own machine. The humiliation was 1,000 times greater than throwing a piece of cake. It was a precise surgical dismantling of his entire existence. He looked around the room at the life he had built, the empire founded on a rotten core. He looked at Celine. Really looked at her for the first time. He didn't see the docile, decorative woman he had married. He saw a stranger, a brilliant, ruthless strategist who had outplayed him at his own game. He saw the woman she had been all along, the woman he had tried and failed to extinguish. "You've been planning this for months," he breathed. "Ever since you showed me who you truly were." She replied, "You threw cake at me to show me I was nothing. I am taking your company to show you that you made me everything." He sank into a chair, his head in his hands. He was defeated, utterly and completely. He knew he had no choice. The alternative was unthinkable. "My lawyers will need to see this." He mumbled a final feeble attempt to grasp at control. "Of course," Celine said. She pulled out her phone. "Genevieve is waiting downstairs. Shall I send her up?" The finality of it crushed him. It was already done. He picked up a pen from the desk, his hand shaking. He looked at the signature line, and with the stroke of a pen, Lucan Blackwood signed away his kingdom. Celine watched him, feeling not triumph, but a quiet, solemn sense of justice. She gathered her photographs and the signed contract. She walked to the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. "You will be a father to our child Lucan," she said, looking back at his broken form. "You will be present, you will be kind, and you will be respectful. You will teach him about technology and innovation, and I will teach him about integrity. He will have the best of both of us, and none of the worst. That is my other condition." And with that, she walked out of the penthouse, leaving the door open behind her. She didn't look back. She walked out into the glittering New York night, no longer Mrs. Blackwood, the billionaire's wife, but Celine Varel, the majority shareholder of Blackwood Industries. She was free, and she was just getting started. Celine's story didn't end with her signature on a piece of paper. It began. She didn't just take over a company, she transformed it. Under her leadership and with a hand-picked CEO, Blackwood Industries was restructured from the ground up, becoming a model for ethical innovation and corporate responsibility. The Nightingale Project was rechristened the Varel Foundation, a charitable trust dedicated to supporting female entrepreneurs and victims of domestic abuse, funded by Lucan's 49% share of the profits. Her story, when it was finally told on her terms, wasn't one of a wife's revenge, but of a woman's incredible resilience. She proved that the most powerful response to humiliation isn't anger, but intelligence, strategy, and the unwavering courage to rebuild a better world from the ashes of a broken one. She didn't just leave her toxic marriage. She turned the very source of her oppression into her greatest instrument of power and positive change. If this story of strength, shock, and incredible justice resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own inner power. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true life dramas, where the underdog doesn't just get even, they change the entire game. What did you think of Celine's final move? Let us know in the comments below. They say every marriage has its secrets, some small enough to slip under the radar, others large enough to crack the very foundations of trust. But what if the secret is discovered in the most unforgiving spotlight of all, a crowded upscale restaurant? And what if, at the exact moment, a wife learns about her husband's betrayal? She's carrying his child, unsure whether to expose him, protect him, or destroy everything in one impulsive move. This story follows the meteoric rise and catastrophic fall of Derek Harrington, a man who had it all until one dinner turned his world into a firestorm of scandal and investigation. Derek Harrington had always exuded a confidence that verged on arrogance. He was the type of man people noticed in a room, tall, well-groomed, with an intense gaze that made you think he saw your secrets before you even decided to trust him. At 37, he was already heading one of the fastest-growing private tech investment firms in the country. Harrington Ventures nestled in the heart of New York City. Many had whispered comparisons. He could be the next Elon Musk, or he's aiming to dethrone Bill Gates in philanthropic efforts. Of course, those comparisons were mostly hot air in the media, but Derek ate them up like candy and fueled his ambition further. He had grown up in a modest home in Syracuse, New York, the son of a middle school teacher and an unemployed mechanic. Derek swore to himself at a young age that he would never again know the taste of poverty and uncertainty. If there was a mountain, he would climb it. If there was a competitor, he would annihilate them, or better yet, buy them out. Ever since his first big deal, a startup buyout that netted him a cool $20 million by the age of 26, Derek became addicted to the thrill of high-stakes ventures. His wife, Catherine Harrington, was the silent strength behind him. Once Catherine Barnes, she had come from an entirely different world, an only child raised in Connecticut by a wealthy yet tight-knit family who adored her. Catherine's father, Alexander Barnes, had a small but respectable real estate firm that catered to elite clients. Catherine had an aura of class that Derek desperately needed. Although he was confident in boardrooms and pitch meetings, he often floundered in high society's intricacies. Catherine taught him how to navigate those elite circles with charm and grace. For the past 6 years, Their marriage had been a blend of love, shared ambition, and occasional tension, particularly since Derek began pouring all his time into Harrington Ventures. Catherine had repeatedly asked for a child, a family. Derek always said, soon pushing it down his list of priorities. But finally, to Catherine's breathless joy, she became pregnant. Derek, for his part, seemed excited, though many nights he would return home after midnight, exhausted, complaining about client dinners or late-night strategy sessions. Still, Catherine believed in him. She believed in his vision, in his ability to provide not just for her, but for their soon-to-arrive child. Even if love had cooled into routine, she trusted Derek would protect their family. She had no idea her entire life would be thrown upside down by one small choice, deciding to meet an old friend for dinner in the heart of Manhattan. Catherine had not planned to be at the upscale restaurant Aux Merveilles that particular night. She was 8 months pregnant and feeling more fatigued than usual. But her college friend, Melanie Carter, was passing through New York for the first time in years and insisted on seeing her. To Catherine, it felt like an unexpected gift, an escape from waiting at home alone for Derek to walk through the door at some unknown hour. Melanie had chosen Aux Merveilles because she'd read about it in a luxury travel magazine. The interior glimmered with crystal chandeliers, and each table was separated by translucent screens that glowed with soft amber light. The gentle hum of hushed conversations filled the air, occasionally interrupted by the clink of expensive dinnerware. Catherine arrived early, leaning on the hostess stand for a moment to steady herself. A sympathetic staff member immediately guided her to a plush velvet seat and offered a glass of water. She felt a bit out of place in her maternity dress, noting the swirl of elegant women in cocktail dresses and men in tailored suits. But she brushed off the discomfort. She was here to see her friend, not to impress the Manhattan elite. While waiting for Melanie, Catherine decided to freshen up in the restroom. On her way back, something caught her attention through the filmy screen of a private dining area. At first, she had no idea why her gaze lingered there. She could see a man's silhouette, tall and commanding, and across from him sat a slim figure with flowing dark hair. Catherine's heart twitched. The tilt of the man's head, the way he gestured with his hand that was Derek's mannerism. But it couldn't be. Derek had told her he was in an urgent meeting on the other side of town. Her heart pounding. Catherine took careful steps toward the screen, making sure to stay hidden behind the plush drapery that separated the main dining area from the private alcoves. A waiter passed by, but she quickly turned away, pretending to examine a painting on the wall until he was gone. Then she returned her gaze to the table. Yes. It was Derek. He was dressed in a charcoal suit, the kind he wore for special private events. And he wasn't dining with a business associate. His companion was a woman with an air of cold, dazzling beauty. Catherine didn't recognize her immediately. Maybe she was a client. But then she noticed the way the woman's hand stretched across the table to rest on Derek's fingers, a gesture far too intimate for a business meeting. Catherine's stomach churned. She felt dizzy. She almost rushed forward to confront him, but some primal sense of caution rooted her to the spot. She wasn't prepared for a scene. She didn't know if she was strong enough to face the answers to the burning questions swirling in her mind. So she watched. Derek leaned in, and the woman did the same, her glossy black hair falling forward to frame her face. Catherine could make out the name Sabrina Chen from the conversation. They chuckled softly, and Derek brushed a strand of the woman's hair back behind her ear. Catherine's hands shook tears threatening to flood her eyes. She pressed herself against the wall. She needed to get out of there, needed to breathe. She turned and hurried away, nearly running into a startled Melanie who was just arriving. Melanie took one look at Catherine's pale face, then glanced curiously at the private alcove. "Are you okay?" she asked, hands gripping Catherine's arms gently. "My goodness, you look like you've seen a ghost." In a strangled voice, Catherine replied, "I'm not feeling well, Mel. Can we go somewhere else?" Melanie, always sensitive, nodded without question. She guided Catherine outside, hailed a taxi, and insisted they go back to Catherine's penthouse so she could rest. Catherine murmured something about not wanting to be alone, about needing to talk. Once in the taxi, she told Melanie everything that Derek was there with another woman, clearly more than a business associate. Her friend listened, anger flaming in her eyes. "You need to confront him," Melanie said. "He can't get away with this, especially now when you're about to have his child." But Catherine felt paralyzed. Her mind spun with a million scenarios, none of them good. She wanted the safety of denial, to pretend she didn't witness the betrayal. But she also wanted the raw truth. By the time they reached her penthouse, she had made a decision she would wait for Derek to come home. He would have to look her in the eye and explain. Night stretched on with excruciating slowness. Melanie offered to stay, but Catherine insisted she'd manage. She needed to confront her husband alone. So Melanie left with repeated promises that Catherine call her for any reason, day or night. The apartment felt cavernous once Catherine was alone. Her baby kicked inside her as if sensing her mother's distress. Sometime near midnight, Catherine dozed off on the living room couch, still in her maternity dress and heels, phone clutched in her trembling hand. She awoke to the click of the front door. Derek stepped in laptop bag over his shoulder tie, slightly loosened. He paused when he saw her lying on the couch in the dim light. "You're still awake?" he asked, crossing the room to place a kiss on her forehead. His breath smelled faintly of wine. Catherine recoiled, the sting of his betrayal fresh in her mind. She struggled to compose herself, but emotion burst forth. "Where were you?" Derek froze, obviously caught off guard by her accusatory tone. "I told you I had a meeting." "Don't lie," Catherine shouted. "I saw you, Derek. I saw you at Aux Merveilles with some woman named Sabrina Chen. You were touching her hair." She choked on the words, tears forming again. Derek's face went pale, then hardened with defiance. "You were spying on me." "Catherine, what were you doing there? Having dinner with a friend," she shot back. "But that's not the point. Don't try to twist this around. Just tell me the truth." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "She's just a client. Nothing more. The hair thing, it was just a friendly gesture. You know how these international investors can be. They appreciate closeness, personal connections. She's considering a large investment in Harrington Ventures." Catherine stared at him, heart twisting with disbelief. "I'm not a child, Derek. I know what I saw. That was no casual client dinner." He let out a breath, lips pressed together. "Okay. We're close. But it's complicated. Sabrina has connections with major stakeholders in Asia. She expects a certain rapport. If I don't keep her happy, we could lose a multi-million-dollar deal. So you're sleeping with her to make her invest." Catherine's voice trembled with fury and despair. "It's not that simple," Derek said, but he didn't deny it. "This is business, Catherine. And it's not... it's not what you think. Yes, she's flirtatious. Maybe I crossed a line, but it's for the company, for our future." Catherine stood, a surge of anger giving her strength, even in her pregnant state. "Our future, our child's future. This is how you plan to secure it, by betraying me." Derek's eyes flickered with guilt. But then he hardened again. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Harrington Ventures is on the verge of a major breakthrough. A single large investment could catapult us into the realm of industry giants. I can't afford to let moral qualms hold me back." Catherine felt as if the floor were dropping out from beneath her. She recognized Derek's ambition had always been borderline obsessive. But hearing him admit he'd compromised their marriage, the very sanctity of their relationship, just for a deal, she had no words. A wave of exhaustion crashed over her, mingled with heartbreak. "Get out," she finally managed, voice weak yet resolute. "Catherine," he started. She turned away. "Sleep in the guest room. I can't even look at you right now." He opened his mouth to argue, then thought better of it. Silent, he retreated to the guest bedroom, leaving Catherine to collapse onto the couch in tears. As she drifted in a half-conscious state of heartbreak, a single question throbbed in her mind. How could he do this to us? Sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, stirring Catherine from a fitful sleep. She sat up, her body aching from the night spent on the couch. She half expected Derek to appear with an apology or at least an explanation better than it's for the deal. But the apartment was silent. A check of the guest room revealed he was gone. No note, no text. Only the faint smell of his cologne in the hallway. Catherine felt bitterness coil inside her like a snake. Had he left for work as though nothing had happened? Trying to compose herself, she went about her morning routine, feeding their fluffy grey cat Winston, who circled her legs anxiously, making a cup of tea, gazing out at the city skyline. But none of it soothed her. Her phone buzzed with a message from Melanie. She simply texted, "I'm here for you," followed by a heart emoji. Catherine typed a quick thanks and debated what to do next. Should she confront Derek at his office? Should she call her father? Confide in him? Then as she paced through the living room, the TV caught her attention. A news ticker scrolled across the bottom, and the anchor's solemn voice filled the silence. Ongoing investigation into potential insider trading and financial misconduct at Harrington Ventures. Derek Harrington's office has not yet released a statement, but sources say officials from the SEC are looking into suspicious activity. Catherine fumbled for the remote and turned up the volume. Her heart pounded with alarm. Investigation insider trading. This was the first she'd heard of anything official. The anchor went on. Harrington Ventures soared to prominence in the last few years, drawing comparisons to major tech moguls like Elon Musk and Bill Gates. But now regulators question whether certain investment gains came from illicitly obtained information. Derek Harrington was spotted at a private dinner last night with an unidentified associate, leading to speculation on whether this meeting is connected to the alleged misconduct. In that moment, Catherine felt a strange mixture of shock and vindication. She remembered the hush of Oxmervale, the private table Derek's murmured conversation with Sabrina Chen. Was this the reason for that meeting? She grabbed her phone and scrolled through financial news sites. All of them were erupting with the story. Harrington Ventures under siege. One headline read, "Inside the SEC probe teased another." She found nothing that concretely linked Sabrina Chen to the scandal, only rumors that Derek was meeting with someone who might hold the key to hush money or secret deals. Anxiety clawed at Catherine's stomach. This was beyond a marital betrayal. It might be a legal catastrophe. She needed answers. She dialed Derek's cell, but it went straight to voicemail. Her next thought was to contact his assistant, the ever-efficient Amanda Wu, who always picked up or responded promptly. But even Amanda's phone rang until voicemail kicked in. Fearing the worst, Catherine decided to put aside her heartbreak for a moment and do what she could to protect her family. She reached for her coat and bag, then headed out the door, determined to confront Derek at his office if necessary. The offices of Harrington Ventures occupied the 20th through 22nd floors of a gleaming steel and glass tower in Midtown. When Catherine arrived, the usual bustle in the lobby was replaced by a tense hush. Small clusters of employees whispered, casting anxious glances toward a row of men in dark suits who were busy rifling through documents and laptops. It was clear the investigation was well underway. Catherine stepped off the elevator on the 22nd floor, where Derek's corner office overlooked the city. She braced herself for the sight of more investigators. Instead, she found the reception area swarming with them. She approached a stern-faced man, flipping through files. "Excuse me, I'm Catherine Harrington. I need to see my husband." He regarded her warily. "Do you have an appointment?" She almost laughed at the absurdity. "Appointment, I'm his wife. Is Derek in his office?" The man jerked his head toward a closed door. "He's in a meeting with the SEC officials and his legal team." "Best if you wait." Catherine felt her patience slip. "I'm not waiting," she said firmly. Without another glance, she marched to Derek's office door and turned the handle. Locked. She knocked, ignoring the mutterings of the investigators behind her. After an agonizing minute, the door swung open, revealing Derek's lawyer. A slim woman in a sharp navy suit, a phone pressed to her ear. She looked Catherine up and down. "Mrs. Harrington." "We're in the middle of something." Derek's voice cut through. "Let her in." The lawyer stepped aside, and Catherine entered the office. Derek stood at his desk, arms folded, face drawn and tired. Two men in dark suits sat in chairs across from him, notes scattered on the table. They regarded Catherine neutrally before turning back to Derek. "We'll give you a moment," one of the men said, as they gathered up their documents and stepped out. An awkward hush fell. Catherine closed the door behind them. For a heartbeat, she and Derek just stared at each other, the memory of last night's argument hanging between them. His eyes flickered with guilt concern, and something else, maybe relief. "Catherine." He began running a hand over his face. "I was going to call you once this settled." Her anger reignited at his dismissive tone. "Settled, Derek. You're under investigation by the SEC. This isn't a small pothole in the road. The news is everywhere." He sighed. "Look, I can't say much right now. It's an internal matter, and our lawyers say we should cooperate, but keep quiet publicly. There have been rumors of insider trading, but it's a misunderstanding. We're sorting it out." "A misunderstanding," Catherine repeated. "Does this have anything to do with Sabrina Chen and last night's dinner?" Derek flinched at the name. "Why would you think—" "Because the news outlets are already speculating about it." "Derek," she hissed. "If you were with her to discuss some insider deal—" "Stop," he cut in, raising a hand. "I can't talk about her. Not here, not now. Let's just say I have things under control." Catherine couldn't believe what she was hearing. Under control? "Derek, the entire office is crawling with investigators. I can't even reach your assistant." Amanda was told not to talk to anyone without the lawyers present, Derek said tightly. "She's in a conference room with them now." "This is standard procedure." "Standard procedure," Catherine echoed, her voice faint with incredulity. "How far does this go, Derek? Because if you think I'm going to sit at home pregnant while you're possibly facing criminal charges, I didn't do anything illegal," he snapped, though sweat beaded at his temple. "Sabrina, It's complicated. She brought me some stock tips about a company we were considering investing in. She claimed she had reliable leads. You used them? Catherine pressed her heart, pounding. He swallowed. Not exactly. I just moved some assets around. I didn't know it would be considered insider information. She told me it was her own research, that it was legit. I never expected the SEC to come knocking. Catherine's mind reeled. So he had used Sabrina's tips, likely crossing a line into illegal territory. She stared at him, struggling to reconcile the charismatic man she fell in love with, the father of her unborn child, with this desperate figure in front of her. Finally, she said, "What do you want from me?" "Derek." He looked pained. "I need you to trust me. I'm meeting with Sabrina this afternoon to clarify things. She owes me an explanation. If she fed me illegal tips, it's on her. My lawyers can argue that I was deceived." Catherine's breath caught. "You're meeting her again. After last night." "It's business," he insisted. "Look, I get how bad this looks. But if you want to protect our family, you'll let me handle this. I promise I'll fix it." Part of Catherine wanted to cling to the hope that he could, but she saw the desperation in his eyes, the guilt and confusion swirling there. His ambition, once so inspiring, had turned into a reckless obsession that might cost him everything. Maybe she should walk away, call her father, pack a bag and leave. But she couldn't, at least not yet. She carried his child, and some piece of her still loved him. She nodded once. "Fine. But I'm not leaving you alone in this. I'm staying in the city. I'll do what I can to help." Derek exhaled relief passing over his face. He reached for her hands, but she stepped back. "I'll trust you for now," she said, voice trembling. "But remember, Derek, trust isn't infinite. You've already broken it once." That afternoon, Catherine found herself restless, pacing the penthouse. The SEC had allowed Derek to remain at the office, but insisted he provide any requested documents on demand. His phone was undoubtedly monitored, and Sabrina Chen was labeled a person of interest. Catherine tried to focus on calm. She set up a quiet corner to rest, turned on soft classical music, and attempted to soothe the baby within her. Yet every time she shut her eyes, she saw Derek leaning across that table. Saw him gently touching Sabrina's hair. How did we get here? She wondered. Have I been so naive? A phone call from an unfamiliar number broke her reverie. She picked up, heart hammering. A woman's voice spoke clipped and professional. "Hello, Mrs. Harrington. My name is Caroline Patterson. I'm a journalist at the New York Daily Mirror. We're working on a story about your husband's company. Would you be willing to provide a statement?" Catherine's mouth went dry. No comment, she said, hastily ending the call. But within minutes, another call came from yet another journalist. And then another. It seemed the entire press corps had decided to ring her up in search of a sensational quote. She turned off her phone, trembling with anxiety. The day crawled by. When Derek finally returned home, it was well past 8. Catherine opened the door to find him grim-faced, tie, undone hair disheveled. He looked like a man fighting a war on multiple fronts. "Any progress?" Catherine asked quietly. He nodded. "Lawyers say there's no direct evidence yet. Just allegations that we traded on insider info for a few deals. But they'll keep digging. As for Sabrina..." He paused, looking away. "We spoke. She claims she's just a scapegoat. She said she's taking a flight back to Hong Kong tomorrow, and that the SEC can't touch her there." Catherine's stomach twisted. "So she's running." He shrugged. Or, so she says. I tried to get her to talk to my lawyers, but she refused. She's not answering calls anymore. My attorneys are furious. They say if she disappears, it'll make me look even worse, like we're trying to hide something. Catherine eyed him. Are you still sleeping with her? Derek's cheeks burned red. No. Catherine, I messed up. Okay. I let things get too close, but it was never serious. Not on my end. She wanted to believe him, but suspicion dug its claws into her mind. Is that the truth, or just what you need me to believe? He hesitated. I'm not lying to you. Look, I promise you my relationship with Sabrina was purely for business connections. Maybe it crossed lines, but I never intended to leave you. Or... She shook her head, tears threatening again. How noble, she whispered sarcastically. Derek, I can't keep doing this. I can't watch you destroy yourself and our marriage in this pursuit of power. He reached for her, his hand trembling. For the first time she sensed he was truly afraid. Catherine, if we can get past this, I'll change. I'll make it right. Just stand by me, please. Looking into his eyes, she saw remnants of the man she'd married, the one who had once had dreams of giving them a beautiful life. Hesitantly, she placed her hand on his cheek. He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. They stayed like that for a moment, broken but together. By the next morning, Catherine felt an urgent need for counsel. She made a phone call to someone she knew and trusted her father, Alexander Barnes. Despite their somewhat strained relationship, he had never fully approved of Derek's rags to riches aggression. Her father was a steady presence in her life. Dad, she said quietly when he picked up. Things are bad. Derek's company is under investigation. There's rumors of insider trading. She heard him exhale. I saw the news. Are you all right? I don't know, she confessed. He might have been unfaithful too. I feel like everything is spiraling. Her father's voice softened. Sweetheart, you need to take care of yourself. Think about my grandchild. Stress can't be good for the baby. She stifled a sob. I know. Dad, what should I do? Should I leave him? Alexander was silent for a moment. I can't decide that for you. But listen, Catherine Derek has always been a risk-taker. That's what made him successful. But it can also lead to ruin if he isn't careful. You have to consider if you can trust him to change. And if not, she closed her eyes. I understand. He cleared his throat. If you need a place to stay, come home. Your old room is waiting, or I can set you up in a nearby property. No pressure. But I won't let you face this alone. Tears welled in her eyes, but she felt a measure of warmth. Thank you, Dad. I'll let you know. After the call ended, Catherine sat by the window, watching the Manhattan skyline shimmer under the morning sun. Memories danced in her mind. Meeting Derek at a charity gala, her father hosted the spark in his eyes as he talked about turning dreams into reality, the sweet way he'd slipped a note into her coat pocket with an invitation for a first date. Where had that man gone? Meanwhile, Derek's day took a dramatic turn. He was set to appear for a voluntary discussion at the SEC offices downtown. His lawyers insisted that showing openness would help. But an hour before he was supposed to leave, a text from an unknown number arrived. Meet me at the Park Regency Hotel room, T02. Urgent. Sabrina. His heart pounded. Why would Sabrina risk contacting him now? especially if she was supposedly leaving the country. He showed the text to his head lawyer, Edward Langley, who frowned. That's ill-advised. She's already under suspicion. Derek frowned. But if she has evidence to exonerate me or some angle we can use, it could save the company. Langley shook his head. We can't stop you from going, but this is dangerous. If the SEC finds out, they might interpret it as conspiracy. You should consider letting me or one of the associates go with you. But Derek shook his head. She might not talk if there's a lawyer present. I'll go alone, but I'll record everything. Langley frowned more deeply. Just be careful, and whatever you do, don't offer her money or anything that can be interpreted as bribery. Derek nodded grimly. He texted Sabrina back. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Then he instructed his driver to head to the Park Regency. Anxiety prickled his skin as he imagined the worst. A sting operation, a setup by the SEC, or even blackmail from Sabrina herself. When he arrived at room 1902, he found the door slightly ajar. He knocked softly, hearing the faint sound of classical music from inside. Sabrina's voice called out, "Come in." He stepped into the suite, scanning the opulent living area. Marble floors, plush sofas, fresh roses on the coffee table. Sabrina stood by a window wearing a sleek black dress. She looked impeccable every inch, the mysterious femme fatale. Her gaze locked on Derek. "Don't be shy," she said with a purr. "We don't have much time." Derek hesitated by the door. "Why did you call me here?" She beckoned him over. As he stepped forward, she gestured for him to sit on the sofa. He remained standing. "I'm not staying long. Talk." Sabrina smiled, though tension radiated off her. "I'm leaving for Hong Kong in a few hours. I just wanted to mend things between us." "I never meant for you to get in trouble." He shook his head, anger flaring. "You handed me illegal tips. That's exactly how I got in trouble." She narrowed her eyes. "Don't pretend you didn't know the risks, Derek. You're a smart man. No one invests millions blindly. You could have done your own diligence, but you were too eager." He opened his mouth to retort, but she continued. "Anyway, let's not argue about the past. I have a proposition. I can provide documentation that proves I misled you, that I told you it was my own research, and you relied on it in good faith. If the SEC sees that you could walk away with little more than a slap on the wrist." Derek's heart skipped. "So you'll confess to lying?" She shrugged, a coy smile on her lips. "I'll say whatever you need me to say, for the right price." He clenched his jaw. "What price?" She sauntered to a small table and picked up a folder. "I have it all here, emails, transcripts. It's quite convincing. I want $5 million. Derek nearly choked. $5 million? Sabrina. That's blackmail. Her lips curled. Call it compensation. I'll be ostracized from my circles. I can't do business with you or your connections again. I'll have to rebuild from scratch. Derek's mind spun. $5 million was no small amount, but his company was worth hundreds of millions. If the investigation destroyed it, he could lose everything. Still, even if paying Sabrina might clear him, it was absolutely illegal to bribe a witness. This could bury him deeper in legal trouble. He took a step back, shaking his head. I can't do that. My lawyers would kill me. She rolled her eyes. Your lawyers, Derek. You won't need them if you're indicted. You'll be lucky to avoid jail. He stared at her, fury boiling. So this was your plan all along? To reel me in, feed me these tips and then blackmail me? Sabrina's eyes flashed. Don't be naive. You pursued me for my connections. We used each other. Now let's finish the transaction. He exhaled, attempting to steady himself. I won't pay you a cent. If you have evidence that can help me, provide it. If not, get out of my way. Her expression hardened. Think carefully, Derek. You have a lot to lose. He turned to the door. I'm done with you. As he left, his heart pounded not just with anger, but with fear. Fear that Sabrina might release evidence that would incriminate him further, or worse, twist the facts to frame him entirely. The upcoming meeting at the SEC loomed large in his mind. Back at the Harrington Ventures office, Derek quickly informed Langley of what had transpired. The lawyer's face turned pale. She asked for money. Derek, if we even hint at paying her, it could be seen as witness tampering. We have to disclose this to the SEC, or they might discover it later and accuse us of hiding it. Derek groaned. You're right. Let's get it over with. The two hurried to the SEC building where they were ushered into a conference room. Catherine, who'd insisted on coming along for moral support, sat quietly in the corner. She offered Derek a small nod of encouragement. Despite everything, she was there for him. The lead investigator, a meticulous woman named Francesca Morales, greeted them with cool politeness. Mr. Harrington, we appreciate your cooperation. We have a few questions. Langley gave a tight smile. We want to go on record that Ms. Sabrina Chen attempted to solicit money in exchange for certain statements. We did not comply. Morales leaned forward, interest piqued. That's quite an allegation. Do you have proof? Derek remembered that he had switched on his phone's recording as soon as Sabrina started talking. He glanced at Langley, who nodded. They handed over the audio file. It was risky, but they had no choice. If Sabrina tried to sell a false narrative, at least they had evidence she'd demanded money. Morales listened with headphones, her stern face revealing little reaction. Finally, she removed the headphones. We'll need to verify the authenticity of this recording. For now, it appears Ms. Chen may have engaged in blackmail. She then fixed Derek with a penetrating gaze. But that doesn't absolve you, Mr. Harrington. Regardless of Ms. Chen's motives, if you used insider information knowingly or not, you remain accountable. Derek swallowed. I understand. The interrogation began, and it felt like a slow, agonizing dance. Morales asked about each investment, each conversation with Sabrina, each trade made in the weeks prior. Derek tried to remain calm, giving honest answers, but stopping whenever Langley advised him to. At times, Catherine interjected small clarifications, like how Derek spent nights working on legitimate research, how he had never shown awareness of wrongdoing. Morales took notes meticulously. Finally, after hours, they were dismissed. Langley told them it might take weeks for the SEC to decide whether to press charges, but at least they hadn't been arrested. Catherine managed a small sigh of relief, but Derek's expression was still grim. This is far from over, he muttered. News of the SEC meeting spread quickly through financial circles. Rumors persisted that Sabrina Chen had fled the country. The press speculated wildly. Did the pregnant wife know, secret mistress, at center of scandal billionaire, playboy, or savvy businessman? Each headline more lurid than the last. Investors began pulling out. Harrington Ventures' stock, though private, was partially linked to a public affiliate, and its share price dropped precipitously in after-hours trading. Derek scrambled to reassure stakeholders. He wrote emails, made phone calls, pleaded for patience. Some listened, others distanced themselves. The board of directors called an emergency meeting to discuss damage control. Catherine watched the meltdown with growing horror. She wanted to stand by Derek, but each day more revelations emerged about how close he and Sabrina had been. Photos surfaced of them at charity galas, at private dinners, looking more intimate than Derek had admitted. The press ran with the story, painting a picture of a torrid affair. Catherine felt herself roiling with a mix of jealousy, betrayal, and lingering love. One night, Derek returned home, late, throwing his keys on the kitchen counter in frustration. "We lost another investor. The board is furious." Catherine, who had been restless all evening, approached him tentatively. "You need a strong public statement," she suggested. "Something that clarifies everything from the insider trading allegations to your relationship with Sabrina." He slammed his fist on the counter. "I can't talk about the investigation publicly, Catherine. The lawyers forbid it. And as for Sabrina, I'd just be fueling the tabloid fire." She tried to maintain composure. "So you do nothing?" His face twisted with exhaustion. "Yes, for now. We do nothing. The lawyers say we need to wait until the SEC finishes their inquiry. Then we can mount a defense." Catherine nodded numbly. She felt shut out. Every day the tension in the penthouse grew heavier, as if invisible walls were closing in. And Derek seemed to alternate between frantic action and stony silence, leaving Catherine alone in her swirling thoughts. A few days later, Catherine's father showed up unannounced at the penthouse. Derek had gone to the office. She welcomed Alexander in, offering him tea. He studied her face, concern etched in his expression. "You look exhausted," he said. "I can't sleep," Catherine admitted. "I keep replaying everything in my head." Alexander placed a comforting hand on hers. "Come home with me, at least for a while, to clear your head. Give Derek space to sort this out." She hesitated, torn. I don't want to abandon him." Alexander sighed. "You wouldn't be abandoning him, dear. But you're pregnant, stressed, and it's not healthy. You need calm surroundings, not SEC investigators and salacious tabloids." Catherine thought of the baby, the life growing inside her. She felt a pang of guilt. She was so consumed by Derek's crisis, she barely paused to consider her own well-being. After a long moment, she nodded. "You're right. Let me pack a bag. If Derek wants to talk, he knows how to reach me." Within an hour, she was in her father's car, heading toward the tranquility of Connecticut. She left a short note for Derek. "I'm going to Dad's for a few days to rest. I hope you understand." She didn't expect an immediate response, and she got none. Days turned into a week. Catherine settled into a guest suite at her father's estate, where the staff fussed over her, ensuring she had healthy meals and plenty of rest. She felt her body relax bit by bit, though her heart still weighed heavy. She kept an eye on the news. Harrington Ventures seemed to be on the brink. More rumors of a mass investor exodus, talk of a possible resignation by Derek if indicted. Then one afternoon, Catherine received a call from an unexpected source, Amanda Wu, Derek's assistant. Amanda's voice trembled with urgency. "Mrs. Harrington, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's something you should know." Catherine gripped the phone. "What is it?" A man came by the office, Kyle Peterson, one of Derek's old associates. He claimed to have documents that could prove Derek's innocence. But Derek is so busy fighting fires, he barely gave Kyle the time of day. Kyle said he discovered that Sabrina Chen had conspired with another firm to sabotage Harrington Ventures. He said it was personal for her. She wanted to ruin Derek. Something about an old family feud. Catherine's pulse raced. Wait, an old family feud? Sabrina never mentioned anything like that. I don't have details, Amanda said. But Kyle swore he has proof. Sabrina manipulated data to make it look like Derek was trading on insider info, when in fact it was all her doing. He tried emailing Derek, but with the SEC monitor it might get lost. I think Derek's ignoring him because it sounds too far-fetched. But Kyle seems genuine. Catherine thought back to Sabrina's chilling composure, her blackmail attempt. Maybe Sabrina had orchestrated the entire fiasco, setting Derek up for a fall, while reaping her own profit. It was a terrifying thought, but it made sense given her abrupt disappearance and hush-money demands. Amanda, can you put me in touch with Kyle directly? Catherine asked. Of course. I'll text you his number. Minutes later, Catherine spoke to Kyle. He explained that Sabrina's father, Wei Chen, once competed with Derek for a major Chinese tech merger. Derek's success had apparently cost Wei Chen a fortune and tarnished his reputation back home. Kyle believed Sabrina sought revenge under the guise of forging a business relationship, planning to entangle Derek in legal trouble. She fed him tips that appeared legitimate, but in reality they were gleaned from corporate espionage or manipulated data. Then she let the SEC discover them. I have documents showing Sabrina's father orchestrated the entire infiltration, Kyle said, and also a recorded phone call where Sabrina brags about how easy it was to seduce Derek into compliance. Catherine felt anger and relief swirl together. If Kyle's evidence was real, it could vindicate Derek. Why didn't you come forward sooner? He hesitated. I only discovered it a few days ago, rummaging through old servers and unsubscribed email accounts. I used to manage some side projects with Derek, but we parted ways after a disagreement. I had no idea Sabrina's infiltration ran this deep. I thought I owed it to Derek to come clean now. Thank you, Catherine said earnestly. Please get those documents to Derek's lawyers. And also send a copy to me. Catherine returned to the city the very next day. Her father tried to persuade her otherwise, but she insisted. If these documents can save Derek, I need to be there, she said. At Harrington Ventures, she found Derek hunched over a conference table, scattered with papers, eyes bloodshot. The board was in an uproar. The SEC investigation was intensifying. Media outlets were calling him the next Bernie Madoff. It was chaos. Catherine entered the room and placed her hand on Derek's shoulder. He flinched at first, then turned to see her. A mixture of surprise and relief flashed across his face. Catherine, you're back. She nodded. I have news. I spoke to Kyle Peterson. Derek frowned. Kyle, I haven't seen him in ages. Quickly, Catherine explained what Kyle had told her. She saw Derek's eyes widen, a spark of hope igniting. If he really has that evidence, we can prove Sabrina was the mastermind. This changes everything. It does. Catherine agreed. We need to move fast, though, before Sabrina disappears for good. Derek called an emergency meeting with Langley and the legal team. Kyle arrived with a briefcase full of documents and digital files. He walked them through each piece of evidence, showing how Sabrina had infiltrated Harrington Ventures, forged research reports, and leaked them to Derek under false pretenses. The final damning piece, a recorded phone call, where Sabrina gleefully admitted Derek is so hungry for power, he won't even question where the data comes from. By the time the SEC is done with him, he'll be ruined. Langley's eyes shone with triumph. This is exactly what we need. With this, we can build a defense that Derek was the victim of fraud. He'll still face questions about his due diligence, but it's a significant shift in liability." Derek looked stunned, as if someone had handed him a life preserver, just as he was drowning. He turned to Catherine, voice thick. "I don't deserve you. I was so reckless. I should have known better." She placed a hand over his. "Let's just get through this." Armed with the new evidence, Derek's lawyers presented everything to the SEC. The response was immediate and dramatic. Francesca Morales grilled them for hours, verifying the documents, analyzing the authenticity of the recordings, and cross-checking them against Sabrina's earlier claims. 2 days later, the SEC issued a statement. They were redirecting the focus of the investigation toward Sabrina Chen and her associates. Derek remained under scrutiny for negligence, but the criminal angle for insider trading was all but dropped. The media pounced on the story of the scheming mistress, fueling a new wave of scandalous headlines. But for Derek, the worst legal nightmares seemed to recede. He wasn't out of the woods. Entirely civil penalties for failing to perform proper diligence could still be on the table, and Harrington Ventures' reputation was badly tarnished. Investors remained wary, but at least the threat of prison no longer loomed. Throughout the madness, Catherine stayed by Derek's side, though their personal relationship remained strained. She had forgiven him enough to fight for his exoneration, but the wound of his betrayal festered. One evening, after a grueling day of damage control, they sat in the living room. Derek poured himself a stiff drink, offered Catherine sparkling water instead. They sipped in silence. "Thank you," he finally said, "for not walking away, for finding Kyle, for everything." She nodded. "I did it for our child, and maybe for the Derek I thought I knew." He winced at that. She continued, "Where do we go from here?" He drained his glass. "I can't pretend this didn't happen. I failed you. I was so blinded by ambition, I forgot the vows we made. And Sabrina." Catherine cut in gently. "Let's not talk about her anymore." She sighed. "I'm not sure what's next for us, but I do know that if we're going to move forward, we need honesty therapy and time." He closed his eyes, a single tear escaping. "I'll do whatever it takes." In the weeks that followed, Derek officially stepped back from the CEO role of Harrington Ventures, appointing a trusted associate to steady the ship while he sorted out the final legal tangles. The board reluctantly agreed, seeing that Derek had become a lightning rod for controversy. Meanwhile, Catherine focused on her impending motherhood. She invited Derek to prenatal appointments, and he came. Their interactions remained cautious, but as they witnessed the ultrasound images and heard the baby's heartbeat, a profound sense of shared responsibility bound them. Then one crisp autumn morning, Catherine went into labor. Derek rushed her to the hospital, eyes wild with worry. Hours later, they welcomed a baby boy, whom they named Andrew Alexander Harrington. Andrew for Derek's late grandfather and Alexander for Catherine's father. Holding their newborn son, Catherine and Derek felt something shift. The swirling chaos of the past months faded, replaced by a fragile hope. They had survived betrayal scandal and near financial ruin, but life had given them this new beginning, a chance to change. Epilogue. Short conclusion. Within the novel. Over the next year, the SEC investigation wrapped up. Derek settled the negligence charge with a hefty fine and strict compliance measures. Harrington Ventures, though, rebounded under new leadership, and Derek devoted himself to philanthropic initiatives while quietly rebuilding trust among colleagues and loved ones. Sabrina Chen never resurfaced in the US, rumored to be hiding out in Hong Kong under her father's protection, though whispers of further legal action haunted her. For Catherine and Derek, the road to healing was long and winding. They attended counseling, learned to communicate more honestly, and above all focused on raising little Andrew in an environment of love and stability. Through tearful confessions and late-night heart-to-hearts, Catherine began to forgive, and Derek sought to become the man she deserved. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, life rarely is. But in the hush of their child's laughter and the quiet strength of renewed commitment, they found the seeds of something real, something worth preserving. And though the headlines had screamed betrayal and scandal, the final pages of their story were yet unwritten, carrying the possibility of redemption and a new kind of happiness. Life can twist and turn in the most unexpected ways. For Derek and Catherine Harrington, what began as a shocking betrayal escalated into a high-stakes legal drama threatening to tear their lives apart. Yet amidst scandal and heartbreak, they discovered a glimmer of resilience and a reminder that even when everything seems lost, hope can emerge from the shadows. In this story, we've witnessed secrets laid bare, ambitions tested, and a love that struggled to survive the storm. Ultimately, it is a testament to the power of truth and the choices we make in the wake of our deepest regrets. If you found yourself enthralled by the twists and turns of Derek and Catherine's journey, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more captivating tales of ambition, betrayal, and redemption. Your support allows us to continue bringing such stories to life, and we can't wait to share the next chapter with you.